This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Lord Jason of House Ross, Lady Amanda of House Richardson, Lord Adam the Young Bull of House Parker, Sir Peter of House Whittingham, the Ghost of Harrenhal, A Bannerman Has No Name, Lord Thanos of House Titan, Lord Nelson of the Long Isle, the Mother of Cats, Sir Joshua of House Ross, Lady Kendall of House Taylor, Sir Ryan of House Lothstrom, Lady Liz of House Hendricks, Lord Hunter the Foul-Mouthed, Captain of the Guard, Sir Dustin the Rooster Knight, Captain of the Guard, Sir Ron of House Golson, Captain of the Guard.
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 5, Predictions and Follow-Up Friday.
Woo! Sir Ezra. 2 episodes left, man. That's it.
I know. It's
Seems,
crazy. It's shocking.
Seems kind of scary and kind of exciting.
Yeah, I am just at this point, you know, even like we did our initial reaction on Monday, it came out Monday. I kind of felt like I really don't know that I even have any more critiques left in me. You know, I'm just sort of like, let's just see what happens, and I'll really have to digest it as a whole because I just don't know from episode to episode. I kept saying during that episode that I thought I knew where this was going to go. And I wasn't so sure that I liked it. But then I read all these ravens where people are like, oh, Sir Ezra, don't forget, this could still happen or that could still happen. I'm like, yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay? So I'm excited.
Yeah. No, man, I'm excited too. I'm nervous / excited. A wave of emotions as we prepare for the final 2 episodes, man. So we're going to be talking some predictions at the end of the episode. Right. Reading some ravens, hearing what you guys thought. We have some trivia to cover, and a lot to dive into. So first, people have been asking us, we've been getting a lot of these, about where can we follow you guys on social media. You can follow myself anywhere on the internet at Super Gainsbros. That's all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. Sir Ezra, where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can find me at Womperat_2M on Twitter and Instagram, and you know, elsewhere's I don't know where I'm at. You know, I think I've got a MySpace page out there somewhere. I'm not sure that it's still functional, but I'd like to get it. You know,
I'm sure somewhere. I've looked for I have a Zanga page. I'm sure it still it's still. I mean, it has to still exist, right?
I guess
I had one. I had one all the way back in high school. I had a Zanga page, and I posted emo stuff because I was in an emo band. It was real cool.
Oh, that's so great. People are gonna be tracking that down like crazy now. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a funny story about that. I should tell you. I should tell everyone at some point later. But today's not the time because we've got way too much to dive into.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so trivia. So last week's trivia question was, according to Bran, what kind of man is Theon Greyjoy? The answer was a good man. And like 173 people commented. So it's crazy to think that there's that many people in the group. And there's way more than that. And this week's winner is Dustin Huntoon. So Sir Dustin, shoot us a message in the Facebook group and we can get that going to you. It would be a Funko Pop. So
sweet. That's awesome. He is a good man. You know, I'm happy that was said. Still talking about Theon. We were talking about Theon with Order of the Green Hand and how epic that was. Right. Such a good conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so this week's trivia question is, it's always going to be something that happened in the last episode. Who supplies the Mother of Dragons with her coffee? Not really the most native Westerosi drink, but certainly something that took the internet by storm. I guess the showrunners just kind of forgot it was there. But yes,
hold on.
Supplies
I don't
the
know
Mother
that
of Dragons
it wasn't supposed to be there. So,
yeah.
Do they not drink coffee? I mean, come on.
I don't know.
I feel like they do. So, I'm
well, we know.
completely okay with it being
do
there.
you think she drinks it black, or do you think she uses Giant's milk?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's the reason it was just sitting there and it was getting cold because the North serves it with Giant's milk, and so she just couldn't handle it. Yeah, she probably drinks it black, but
Yeah, yeah. I like to put a little ice cream in mine.
Really,
yeah, a little ice cream sundae. In mine. So
I get you. So you kind of like you make like a little masundae. Is that what you're saying?
Sunday, yep.
A little masundae.
I hope that's how you should pronounce it, because we've been getting blasted for how we pronounce it. So,
oh my god.
Thankfully, we don't have to pronounce it anymore because, well, I should stop before we get ahead of ourselves. Okay.
Oh my god, dude. Oh my gosh. Don't you ever talk about me Sunday like that again.
All right. Okay, I won't. Okay. Here we go. Sirs Matt and Ezra. I started listening to your podcast at the beginning of this season, and I must say it's already becoming a highlight of my week. I had to send a Raven this week to share my predictions for the end of the show, which seem obvious to me, but no one is discussing. Then again, if I know anything about Thrones, it's that this perfectly logical conclusion I've drawn will prove to be completely wrong, and the show's answer will make just as much sense. That said, I can't help but shake the feeling that the final conflict set up between Jon and Dany is ultimately a smokescreen. I do think episode 5 will end with Dany taking her rightful place on the throne, but it will come at an enormous cost. The people of King's Landing will be eviscerated, and Dany will be far more feared than loved. I believe in the final episode she will find out about the plot against her and attempt to execute Varys and Tyrion for treason. Varys will die, as foreseen by the Red Woman in a fiery blast, but when Drogon turns to Tyrion, he will be hesitant. Dany will demand to burn him, and eventually the dragon will comply, only for Tyrion to remain unburned. At the same time, Bran, who desperately needs to be utilized on this show, will reveal in a series of visions, including one from the Mad King from Season 6, that Tyrion is the son of Aerys Targaryen and thus a Targaryen by blood. This has been echoed in a number of ways this season. Bran and Tyrion have had quite a few moments in the shadows this season, and Bran has given him a number of knowing looks. Additionally, Davos' speech to Tyrion about the Lord of Light mysteriousness will seemed to be foreshadowing Tyrion having an important part to play. And indeed, I think the final episode of the series will be either called The Lord of Light or The Prince Who Was Promised. And Tyrion's message to Varys that the best man for the throne would be someone who doesn't want it could easily have been referring to himself. Compound all of that with the scene of Tyrion and the dragons from a few seasons ago in the pits of Meereen, and I think the show's been trying to tell us this for over a few years. All of that said, Dany, horrified, will have Tyrion thrown in jail. Jaime or Arya, depending on who lives, will break him out, and Jon will have to forcibly remove Dany from the throne. Eventually, Tyrion will take the throne, bridging the rule of Targaryens and Baratheons/Lannisters, and he will take Sansa as either his queen or form an alliance with her as she remains Warden of the North. I think somewhere in here we'll get some clarity on the meaning of identity of Lightbringer. It's probably Jon himself, the man the Lord of Light resurrected, but Tyrion to me is the promised prince who will drag the realm out of a long night of tyranny. Not as many had assumed the literal long night brought by the White Walkers. Again, this could all be wishful thinking, as my brain is trying to come up with the best possible conclusion to tie it all together, but revealing Tyrion's identity seems to be the only logical use of Bran at this point, and let's face it, they can't let him do nothing for the last 2 episodes. He's a main character. Thanks for reading my wall of text. Can't wait for these next 2 Sundays. Sincerely, Sir James of House Miller.
Wow, yeah. I mean, really, Bran cannot sit by for 2 more episodes, can he? I think that's a good point, and not say something or not have some type of role. Maybe this next episode, for the most part, but that final episode, I feel like we got to have something from Bran. So
agreed. Yeah, Bran is the first character in the books to have a chapter. Mm-hmm. I've always thought it would start with Bran and end with Bran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I see what Sir James is kind of saying. The idea is that Tyrion will sit the Iron Throne and is a Targaryen. We've talked about those theories before. I think it's neat. It would be interesting. You would need someone like Bran to really fill us in. But you get into the same problem that Dany has with the people who told Jon about his parentage, except for in this idea, Tyrion is like attacked by a dragon and survives, and the dragon hesitated. So that was kind of a cool little twist, I think, or that's one of those things that helps you validate a claim that you're a Targaryen, if you will.
Right.
So we were talking with, again, I keep going back to just last night. Order the Green Hand was talking about the idea that, Jon, when he has that connection with the dragon and is able to ride the dragon before he reveals his true parentage to Dany, that should have helped with the shock. She should have been able to be like, wow, okay, there's something going on here. If you study the histories, you can see like the dragon seeds and things. The reason that they were chosen was because they were somehow related or tied to or bastards of House Targaryen. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm with you. The Tyrion is a Targaryen theory is something that we've covered a bunch. It's a big theory. In the show, I don't know if there's been enough of it. Yeah. Possibly the idea when Tywin talks about "you're no son of mine." Obviously, for those who don't know, the big theory is in the books we get a lot more about Tywin and the Mad King and how they worked really well together for a really long time until the Mad King started to go mad. He made references at their wedding about how he wanted to. It's a shame that they didn't have the bedding ceremony anymore, so that the king could kind of take first shot at a new bride. So we know that he possibly lusted after
Joanna, yeah.
After Joanna, yeah. And Tyrion being a dwarf and having two different colored eyes has always been a long belief. He has dragon dreams in the books. In the show, we see him not get eaten or burned by the dragons. So there's that as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot more too with the history between Tywin and the Mad King and him being his hand and then getting bitter over time, and so maybe some of that had to do with jealousy or just wanting to get back at Tywin, so he hooks up with Joanna. Like that could have been some of it. So we don't really know. There's not a lot of legs for it in the show, other than the few things you've mentioned and that was mentioned by our Raven there. But yeah, it could still be a thing, and it just takes a situation like the dragons being burnt or being unburnt, being able to. Doesn't Tyrion in the show go down and unshackle the dragons? That happens in the show,
yes,
right?
He does.
Yeah.
Yep. In Marine. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of going on. That's neat. So I could see it happening. It'd be neat. I kind of hope that Tyrion is. I hope he lives. I mean, could you imagine if Tyrion dies? Like, that's one of those things where I look at a couple characters who I have in my head since the beginning just been like, no way. There's no way that person's going to go. And he's one of those characters. So when I think that, it worries me that, like, okay, I have it so set in my head that he's safe. But after the way he and Varys were talking, Dave said again last night, he was like, they're dead men walking. They're committing treason just by listening, by Tyrion not going it immediately to Dany and saying, this is what Varys is up to. He's complicit. And he's helping, Varys in a way, or letting Varys go about whatever his plan may be. It doesn't warn Dany. So he could be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Tyrion is going to be safe throughout the series. Also, a big part of that Tyrion is Targaryen theory is the three heads of the dragon, which isn't something that's really ever been talked about in the show. It's obviously a bigger part of the books.
Yeah.
And people, I think, easily look at, well, Jon, R plus L equals J, then Daenerys, and then possibly Tyrion being that third head of the dragon, a third Targaryen. So that's where that theory comes from. If they went that route, I'd be really, really surprised in the show. I think it'd be cool. I have always, even if Tyrion isn't a Targaryen, there's still something bigger about his character. There's still something I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't really think they're going to go that way in the show, but if they did, I would love it.
Yeah, it'd be crazy. It would be wild, and I think a lot of people. It's gotten legs in just fan theories and Reddit communities and things because people like the idea of it. People like Tyrion, and we know that George likes the Targaryen family, so it'd be kind of neat to make that connection and Yeah, we kind of have to wait and see, but I don't know. I wasn't a big believer in it, but I just hear more and more people bringing it up, and they find evidence for it. Well, not that there's a lot, but people kind of hang their hat on a few on a few solid things there. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with it.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, do you want to read this next one, Sir Ezra?
Yeah. So let's see. Who do we have here?
Lady Liz.
Lady
of the
Liz.
Land of Orangemen.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Good day, sirs. I just wanted to send a quick raven about episode 4. It's taken me a long time and a couple of rewatches to truly figure out how I feel about the episode. Just a couple of critical thoughts that I did have, though. One was on how they handled her scene, that being Sansa, with the Hound. Sansa says she wouldn't have become strong as she was as strong as she is now if she had not suffered at the hands of Joffrey, Ramsay, Littlefinger, and Cersei. I understand the learning aspect of it, and she learned from that experience, but making it seem like she wouldn't have been, or that she would have been weak if she hadn't have gone through the torture and manipulation irks me. I feel like Sansa is strong despite her history. She could have still become the strong Lady of Winterfell. Okay, point number 1. The second small piece that irked me seems minor, but the internet has blown up over this fact. Here we go. As a dog owner, I can't imagine ever leaving my 2 dogs. One one is like, I believe she has a dog like John, like a husky, I guess maybe, that John left there at Winterfell, that being Ghost. I read that it was for the sake of budget. Oh boy, that'll irk people. We had John and Dany ride dragons, and there wasn't even a pet for Ghost, or like a
Amen.
Like a good bye or attaboy or whatever. Sending Ghost away, I feel like there's going to, if they're going to continue to use the symbolism of direwolves in the show like they have, John's fate I can see going one of 2 ways. Okay, so what she's saying there is that, like, remember how in the past, Sir Matt, like when the direwolves leave you, and
yep,
Catelyn kind of says, like keep them close,
keep your direwolves close, and Sansa's the first who loses hers, and then she's kind of the one,
goes through those troubles, and right, it's everything we just talked about in the first paragraph, the first point by Lady Liz there. Yeah, he either dies or he ends up leaving and going north of the Wall after all of this is over. Direwolf symbolism has been alluded to in the show. When Lady was executed, that can be seen as the death of Sansa's childhood, or the beginning of it, or the beginning of her adulthood. Nymeria's wildness has always been a good representation of Arya. Greywind and Shaggy Dog died along with Robb and Rickon, and Summer died representing the death of Bran Stark and the rebirth of the Three-Eyed Raven. Apologies for the long Raven. Overall, I'm not sure where the series is going to end up. I have mixed feelings about the episode, but most of the things that did bother me at the beginning of the week do not anymore. I do still love the show, and I hope they manage to tie everything up to a bittersweet ending that they said they would from the start. So that's Lady Liz. And, I think this is actually how I feel sometimes. At the start of the week, I'm really not sure, and as the week goes on, I get more ravens, and I think about it and I rewatch it. Some of the things that really I'm an optimist. I mean, like, I'm very optimistic, and I don't always catch some of the little errors or the coffee cup that's left there on the table.
Right.
But I don't know. I try to find ways in my own mind to make things work and fit. And some people will say, well, that in and of itself is should say something about how the show's doing. But I do that with even the best of films and the best of TV shows or books, and I kind of like to embellish and exaggerate and think in my own head that this is, the way maybe that it could have worked, or here's the reasoning behind that. An example of that, people have been talking about the military strategy behind episode 3, right? And kind of why send the Dothraki out there? Why have everybody in front of that trench pit, the fire trench pit? And I saw an interesting theory. I don't know where it's at. We have a Raven. I just could not track it down. I saw it come through, and then I lost it because we literally have over 200-300 Ravens that have come in this week. And it was the idea that Sam was retelling the story, and you find out that it's sort of from his perspective. And the idea is that he's not well-versed in that sort of thing. So to him, I can't remember if the trench was in front or behind us. I don't really know. I was panicked. I was running around like a crazy man. I was pissing my pants.
That'd be super cool. That'd be a super
right.
Cool
It was like I feel like the Dothraki.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I feel like the Dothraki charged. It becomes muddled in his mind. And Sir Matt, you've always talked about point of view and how things can be askewed. So maybe that helped me. I was sort of like, that's kind of cool. That's a cool thought. I'm not so sure that that's what's going to happen, but when I thought about that, I was like, maybe it is just a storytelling, and we're just, even though we watched it, so it's a little different. But yeah, I don't know. The Sansa comment. I mean, yeah, that whole bit with the Hound was. I'm glad she had that moment, and it was very similar to what Bran said to Theon, right? The idea is that all of those things, or to Jaime even too, like everything that you did brought you to this moment and where you're at. So Sansa was kind of even echoing that to the Hound. So I do still think she's strong regardless, and it would have been a different type of strength. And some folks are kind of saying she may be the villain, so perhaps she wouldn't have been as villainous here at the end if she wouldn't have gone through all of that stuff with Littlefinger, Ramsay, Cersei, and Joffrey. That could be the case, and she still would be a strong, good guy, if you will, good protagonist or hero of some kind, heroine. So, yeah, I don't know. Thoughts, Sir Matt?
For starters, I totally agree about the comments about Ghost.
Yeah,
it is disappointing. One of my favorite Twitters is a Twitter called "Can You Pet the Dog," and it's an entire Twitter based around video games, and it just shows pictures of whether in certain video games can you pet the dog or can you not pet the dog. And their Twitter blew up on Sunday night because they were receiving so many things. So they issued like a statement, and they just said you cannot pet the dog in a Game of Thrones, because they showed Jon and Ghost. And I highly recommend people check out that Twitter. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, the comments about Sansa, it is definitely possible that she would have become a strong lady of Winterfell without going through what she went through. But I think a big part of, whether it's superheroes or stories, experiencing death, experiencing trauma, I think always pushes people further in life. And that's something we see a lot in stories.
Sure.
Ned Stark's death causes Robb to be inspired to raise the Northern Lords to start winning a war.
Yeah. You're kind of forced to you're forced to step into the light and take action.
Right. Jon may have a different reaction to Daenerys had he never loved Ygritte. And same with Daenerys. Daenerys, if it weren't for her experiences with the Khal Drogo, she may not be the leader she is today. So, I definitely think it's possible Sansa could have become a similar character without those experiences. But yeah, I don't think that you have to go through that, which I think is what Lady Liz is saying.
Yeah.
To become a strong character.
Right. Yeah. Different variations. It's sort of what other influences would she have had if she wouldn't have gone through Cersei, Littlefinger, Ramsay, all that kind of stuff. She would have been different, and maybe it would have been her mother influencing her, or the death of her family. It might have been more like what Robb went through, just being pushed into that.
Well,
position.
I think if you look at Marjorie Tyrell shows up. Doesn't seem like she's really had a lot of strife in her life. She talks about how Highgarden's one of the most beautiful places in the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah,
their house is the second most powerful, rich house in the Seven Kingdoms. And when she comes in, she clearly knows how to play the Game of Thrones. She's a very strong character.
Yep.
They make a bad alliance at the end with the Faith, but so it's totally possible that Sansa could have become a similar character.
Yeah, exactly. And Marjorie just may have had those experiences with her grandmother and maybe ladies at court, and she was more trained for that. It seems like Sansa was always dreaming of going to court and dreaming of this.
Marjorie's also a little bit older too.
Yeah. But it feels like Marjorie they knew from the get-go that she was going to really maybe play a role at King's Landing or be involved in that Game of Thrones stuff. Sansa being from the north, I don't know that they had penciled down from the beginning that she's going to be betrothed to the Joffrey or the king or whatever, to a southern lord. So yeah, it's just different. I mean, she has those dreams, but no one's kind of like grooming her for that necessarily. So yeah.
Right.
Good thoughts, Lady Liz. I like it. Yeah, I want to read this one real quick if that's okay, Sir Matt.
Okay, go right ahead.
This is Sir Sam, the Hammer here. He's always in the Facebook group, been around since the beginning, and we enjoy his thoughts for sure. Always gives us good feedback, and so we appreciate his presence. And I want to say before I read this, I keep referencing a conversation we had with the Order of the Green Hand, Dave and Mary Ellen, because we were up till probably 2 or 3 in the morning last night talking to them. Oh my God,
yeah.
It's crazy. So some of what Sam the Hammer says here, I'm going to tie into that conversation, and that will probably post Saturday or Sunday. So be ready for that. It's just going to say Order of the Green Hand collaboration. It's a good talk, and we'll get into that later. But so here we go. Sir Ezra and Sir Matt, I just wanted to play devil's advocate and get your thoughts on the show writers. The general consensus of the group seems to be that since the show has moved away from Gurm's source material, the plot and the writing has gone awry. The fault for this has broadly been laid at the double D's door. People will even go so far as to attribute plot elements to one or the other based on how good they were, i.e., that must have been given to them by George, or, quote, there's no way it's going to happen like that in the books. We often give George all the credit and Dave and Dan all the blame. It becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because essentially Gurm hasn't created anything in A Song of Ice and Fire storyline for almost a decade. What were considered to be mysteries or intrigue in the early seasons are now dismissed as plot holes as we close in on the end of the show. What if the source material is to blame? We often talk about this neat bow analogy of all of Gurm's threads coming together in a single satisfying conclusion, but maybe it isn't going to. What if all these threads can't be resolved? What if that is why the books are now such a struggle and taking so long? Oh, boy, I have thoughts on that. What if the existing material is the problem, leaving the show to do whatever they can to wrap up the conclusion? Gurm originally planned the series to be a trilogy, then 4 books, then 6 books, and now currently 7 books. The publishing history of A Song of Ice and Fire is one of missed deadline after missed deadline and an ever-expanding canon as the author struggles to contain the world he has created. I just see Gurm like, it's getting out of control. Oh, gee. It's not a
just
new character.
There with,
I got to get him in here.
Stacks and stacks of books around him and ideas.
He's just buried in this. He's just like, this is out of control. All right. Can anyone really bring all these threads to a satisfying conclusion that makes sense within the scope of the show, the books, and the wider world of Ice and Fire? At the moment, it doesn't even look like George can. Sir Sam the Hammer. Sir Matt, if I may, I'm going to toss this to you in just a second. I have said since we started doing YouTube and since we, years ago, we're doing reactions and talking about this, I was telling you, I was like, man, in the books there are hundreds of thousands, there hundreds, 2,000, maybe there's thousands of characters. That I'm like, how do you tie all this up? I was just like, it's crazy. And as you said, I think you said this last episode, hey man, there could be a Septa Baelor situation where we blow everybody up or we get all those characters in the right spot and then Cersei does something, and that may be what George has to do to kind of end some of those lines or those threads that are weaving through the story. So I get that. The bit about the showrunners, I have said, they're in a tough spot. George is also, I think, in a tough spot. The way he writes, like the writing seems to evolve, the characters evolve, and certain things kind of grow on him, and he likes where that's going. Oh, I like what's happening here with Arya and her development. Let me take that a step further. Even though he has and I'm not saying that he doesn't have a foundation and an outline. He definitely does. So those core characters, I feel like there's things in a Game of Thrones that I just look at Lady Stoneheart, look at the Hodor stuff. I mean, even though that hasn't happened in the books, there's some really cool nuggets that have been laid in there from the get-go that he is driving towards, and they're epic. But other characters emerge in different ideas or thoughts maybe come to George, and he includes those in the story. So I get how that's tough. And we were talking with Dave and Mary Ellen, and they said think of it as in mountains. And I liked this analogy. Let's say George said, hey, here's an event. There's this mountain right here. All the characters have to get to that mountain. And then way off in the distance, they have to get to that mountain. Now, I can't tell you how they get there, but here's a couple events that I have planned. This mountain, that mountain, then over here they have a battle. Right. And it's D&D's job to kind of guide the characters to those major events because that's what George has given them. So we don't really know what he's given them. And also, it may evolve along the way. He may find out that, you know what, I thought this character was going to make it to the mountain, but he's not going to. Yeah,
you know me, Sir Ezra. There are many paths to the top of the mountain, but the view is always the same.
yeah.
And I think that's true. I think the showrunners were put in a really tough position because, I don't know if they signed up. I doubt they signed up to finish, George's books. I think it was probably a Harry Potter situation where they said, okay, he's going to keep pushing out the books as we go along. Mm-hmm. And we're just directors.
Right.
And then they're essentially forced to write new material.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think you can blame them for everything. I do think you can blame them for some things.
Yeah, a little inconsistency in the show.
In this last episode, for example, they said, how did they not see the fleet? And in the after episode, their response was, well, Dany just kind of forgot about the fleet. That seems quite lazy.
Yeah.
Or we just needed to get them there so that this could happen. Kind of an answer. The Starbucks thing is that happens. That happens.
Yeah, that's fine.
That happens. There's episodes where you can go back and when Jaime is in King's Landing during the season 5 with the where they're dealing with the Faith, and you can see a parking lot in the background, and
really?
In Harry Potter there's a shot where you can see a cameraman. Mm-hmm. So I mean, small stuff like that happens. That is what it is. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Well, but
go ahead.
real one thing real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I definitely think they've done a decent job. It may not be the ending we want, but it's also entirely possible that the books are not the ending that we want. So
sure,
we're never gonna know until the books come out.
Yeah, and we can compare. Right.
And we can compare. And it's because they chose to start this series before the books were finished. That's the situation we live in. And now we'll always be second guessing. If the books end the same way, then we can look back and say, okay, well, that's what they were given. If it ends differently, we can say, well, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. And I was listening to Lady Gwynnifer from Radio Westeros, and I've heard her mention this 2 to 3 times on her podcast, which is she interviewed George, I believe, or she was referencing an interview. Sound like she actually interviewed him. But anyways, he seemed like, I mean, you could almost like, according to her, feel the disappointment coming from him and that he didn't get to finish the series, that he thought he was going to actually be able to get it done, and he was surprised at how quickly the show caught up to him. And, in his mind, it was going to be 10 seasons, and they would have done more in A Feast of Crows, and they would have stretched some of this out or what have you, not killed Stannis, kept him around. So there are things that were, you feel for him because he's like, man, I thought I had time. And then the showrunners are just like, well, we're responsible now for finishing this out. As you say, we've got to write something. You've given us a couple different things. And now at this point, he's not going to go back and say like, all right, guys, here's Winds of Winter. You know what I mean? He's not going to do that. That's not, maybe he did. I don't know. But Because if he did, then a lot of people are going to be shocked and say, and as Sir Sam the Hammer is saying here, is it something that Gur gave them, or did they come up with it? Where are you going to lay that air quote blame? It's easy to do now because we don't have the books, and you can say, well, that's not going to happen in the books. I don't know, man. We have no idea. Like, you could do a lot in what, I mean, he brings in John Connington. He brings in young Griff out of, not out of nowhere, kind of out of nowhere, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, when you read it in the books, you're like, who? Where? John Connington?
Yeah, he does. John Connington and young Griff show up in Dance of Dragons.
Yeah, so that becomes your alternative to, like, okay, well, here's another mysterious young man who could fit the profile of the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna or what have you, or Ashara, whatever you want to say. There's something there. And so that comes out of nowhere. What is he going to do in Winds of Winter? Maybe there's another thread here that starts to develop where Arya is on a path to killing the Night King, and there is a strong correlation between the House of White and Black and the Children of the Forest, and the children influenced the creation of the Faceless Men. If that starts to emerge, well, by golly, then okay, that's what George wanted, and that's maybe why they tried. They went the way that they went about it. It's just tough. So Sam's right. It's they're in a tough spot, and I feel bad for George. It's one of the most interesting things I think that's ever happened. Right? I mean, it's such a huge TV show, and the series is not finished. And I think it blew up too. I don't think George thought it was going to be as
I don't either.
As this big of a hit as he did when he first said, "Yeah, go for it." Because sometimes shows don't make it. He said, "Oh, right. we'll give it a go." He wanted to see it completed, but then he thought that he had plenty of time. So it's just
I mean, especially about a book series that up until that point it was not as big as when they did the Lord of the Rings movies. The Lord of the Rings is a classic. Everyone, I mean, people know what it is. I read The Hobbit when I was in like 5th grade. Game of Thrones, I never knew existed until the show came out.
Yep, that's how most people were. I mean, they're
right.
Most people did not understand it. I knew about it because there was a rumor that Wheel of Time and Game of Thrones that they were wanting to develop a show out of one of those two series, and I picked the wrong one. I read Wheel of Time, actually. Great series.
I wouldn't say the wrong one.
I wouldn't say the wrong one either. Yeah, I picked that one.
Either way, I wouldn't say the wrong one.
Yeah. So I read that one, and then I was like, oh, well. And I got halfway through, and they started with the Game of Thrones stuff. So then switch gears, hop into Game of Thrones.
And actually, though, bringing up Wheel of Time is actually a really good point, because a lot of people have said, well, what if Gur dies? Because he is an older guy. If you read A Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan's enormous fantasy series, how long? It's like 15 books, right? I think
13 or 15. I'll look. Yeah,
13 to 15 books. Brandon Sanderson comes in. I think it's 15. Brandon Sanderson comes in and finishes the last 3 books, and it feels different. It definitely feels different, and that may be what happens here. It's possible it may take Gur. It's possible Gur may only finish Winds of Winter.
Yeah.
And never finish the last book. So and then maybe we only have his manuscripts to go off of, and somebody else comes in, or maybe this is what we end up getting. It's
essentially actually that's a really good point. So it's a 14 book series. And there's the 15th book was the prequel, as you said. So 15 books.
Right. Yeah, 15 books.
But when Brandon Sanderson has to take over, it's like his Robert Jordan's wife, and actually Robert Jordan, I think, kind of is involved in selecting him. And maybe not. But yeah, either way, he's in a position that's kind of similar. He has to finish something. You know what I mean? He
right.
And he couldn't go back and ask Robert Jordan. And I don't know how much they can ask George.
Absolutely. And Brandon Sanderson's writing style is so drastically different, because Robert Jordan, one of the reasons for people who haven't read that series, one of the reasons the series goes so long is because Robert Jordan, much like Gur, I think Gur obviously draws a lot of inspiration from him because he's referenced him before. He spends a lot of time really crafting this world. He doesn't just talk about, if you walk into a scene and there's food on the table, he's going to explain every single detail that there is. There's crumbs. They were as large as an ant. As long as you can go. And Gur does that as well, where they're trying to not just tell a story but create a world.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when Brandon Sanderson comes in, it's, okay, well, I need to finish this. I need to finish it now. And things start getting really choppy. All right, we need to get this character here and finish their story, whether they die or move somewhere else or whatever. So it starts getting really choppy.
Yeah.
And things get kind of lost. And I still think it ends, Wheel of Time ends okay.
Sure.
But
it's a tough spot for Brandon to be in, though.
It's look at where it is now. Maybe the showrunners were saying, this whole Azor Ahai stuff, not really what the show watchers want. And at the end of the day, it's possible it's not even that big of a deal. So let's just kind of get past a lot of that and just get to Arya killing the Night King. Because the bigger story is the Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we actually have a raven about that. The idea that it's not. And let me jump to that raven real quick because it fits right into.
Let's go right ahead. Let's go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Lady Melanie. I'll jump down here. I'm gonna skip one, Sir Matt. So hi there. Usually I'm only a listener to your wonderful podcast and refrain from writing like this, but I simply have to after having heard your last episodes. I do not read any forums, Twitter, Reddit, so please forgive me for jotting things down that you might have heard many times before. It's totally fine. We get that. At first, I was perplexed that the war against the White Walkers was only an interlude, and that so many of the characters have survived. After giving it more thought, it seems to me that Gurm's overall intention is to take us back to the true nature of humankind. Let's see. Imagine that the characters survive the existential battle against evil/death, and after that, they forget their alliances. The craving for power or revenge gets stronger again, and people lose their lives for this irrelevant battle for the throne. Like Missandei, history repeats itself, but mankind will never learn. To me, this is the pessimistic quintessence of Game of Thrones. I wonder why people miss Bran or the Night King's motivations. In my opinion, they do not need any. As far as I understand it, Bran is the collective memory of mankind, and the Night King is the personification of evil. As such, they do not need any motivation for doing this. They just do/are. Thank you very much for your podcast. Greetings from Germany, Lady Melanie. So the idea is that we make these alliances and we come together as a group to destroy evil. We have all these alliances. We forget our old bickerings, and then afterwards we revert right back to the way we were before. So
yeah.
I think that's interesting. I mean, it reminded me of kind of like some of our great wars, some of our great world wars that we've had. Some alliances have continued and different things, but some haven't, or things have deteriorated, and people go back to their own. How do we? What I'm trying to say? Like kind of back to their own self-interest. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jaime. Jaime does show up to fight for the living, and then now he's going back to Cersei. So I mean, that happens.
Yeah. Right. So
it's kind of like I remember watching an interview with Bill Clinton, because I like Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel has asked all of the presidents that have ever come on his show about aliens and UFOs and if they were real.
Yeah.
And he had Bill Clinton on once, and it's always a joke because obviously,
they're real,
whether they are real, but of course the presidents can't say that. And so Bill Clinton once said on there, he says, think about it, if they actually did show up, I think a lot of our differences would suddenly be solved, because we would all as a planet Earth have like a common enemy. And so yeah, I think that happens too, and that's part of my issue with the way the Night King went down in the show. I was kind of hoping it would force them all to fight together, and still possibly have some backstabbing along the way, because even it does happen a little bit if you think about Sansa in the crypts. She's in the crypts of Winterfell while this battle that may kill everyone is going on, and she's still playing the Game of Thrones. Yeah. So I thought that would have been a really cool thing to do, where you could have forced a lot of characters down to King's Landing. Cersei could have been really upset, being, if you had all done your job, none of this would be happening. Kind of a story arc I thought would have been cool, but yeah, I totally agree that the idea of a common enemy, and then afterwards, okay, now it's time to get back to where we were.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that's the way it's gonna roll out in the books. People have been kind of upset, like, well, why wouldn't the Night King situation be at the end? Well, maybe that is the way George is gonna do it, and it's this commentary on the way we are as humans, mankind. So interesting. All right, I think let's go back here to Lady Jessica.
Oh, okay.
You got this one?
Sure. Now, oh wait, sorry. Let me go back to her beginning. Hi guys, it's Lady Jessica for Colorado. After watching the latest episode, I have to say I love the beginning, but as the episode went on, I became annoyed. But also feels like we are getting back to the old Game of Thrones, where everyone is plotting against each other. I absolutely loved when they said goodbye to the ones they had lost at the feast. I loved the feast more. It's where I felt old Game of Thrones coming back. 1 minute, it's easy going. People are laughing, having a good time. The next, you are having people doing power plays, like Daenerys legitimizing Gendry and making him a lord, believing so that he's loyal to her. Not sure if this was a good move on her part, because the one person who Gendry is going to be loyal to the most is Arya. To be fair, Daenerys doesn't really know about Gendry and Arya, however. The one thing that really sold me on this episode was finally getting Jaime and Brienne to hook up. I also knew this was something that would make Jaime leave. As much as I hated this part, it was so powerful you could see the inner battle that's raging inside Jaime. If they don't get back together, there's still a chance of Brienne to be pregnant with Jaime's baby. Now for the things that irritated the hell out of me. The first was how Daenerys doesn't seem to care about most of her troops are tired. They just got done fighting one of the biggest wars, and now they're going to go fight in another. The people are going to be running on empty pretty soon and not worth much when it comes to the true fight. But Daenerys said something in the lines like, my enemies are not going to lay in wait, which she has a point. And that leads me to my next irritation. Daenerys knows she has her enemies around and are going to be looking for any opportunity to take advantage of her. So here she is riding her dragon, having the other one right beside her, not having a care in the world, and having her fleets just moseying on around, and no one is on high alert. They are close to enemy territory and should have been on full alert. It just makes me mad that no one is even looking out for this. And because of this, they lost a dragon and a pretty good portion of their fleet. Maybe they should listen to Sansa. The other thing that irritated me until I talked to my friend who is getting her PhD in human behavior was how Jon was acting during the military meeting. He keeps acting like Dany can do nothing wrong while his family is all wrong about her. My friend says that instead of focusing on his words, we should be focusing on his body language. The way he is more tense around Dany, relaxed around his family and friends. And in the meeting, he looked how he was trying to communicate silently to Sansa with the slight shake of the head. Not sure if she's right, but I sure hope she is. I've seen in a couple of posts suggested the same thing. I've seen a theory that says Jon will head back to the Wall once it's all said and done. If this happens, why go through all the trouble of revealing his heritage and making it a big deal besides giving Dany someone to compete for the throne with? I just don't see the reason to go through all this trouble and have him go back to the Wall or beyond the Wall. If you have any ideas about this theory, I just don't like the idea of him going back to the Wall. Thanks for listening to my rant, Lady Jessica. So let me piece some of this together here. Yes, it does seem like Dany is really rushing into the Iron Throne, not waiting, and that's making her a little bit reckless. I think, though, that's okay because that's kind of been her character. Tyrion advises her a lot of times not to do something, and she just does it anyway, and that has caused her problems when she murders, or when she executes Sam's parents. That causes Sam to be the first one to really kind of push Jon against Dany. So remember that Sam was really the first one to say, "Why are you going with her?" Then you have Sansa, his family, air quote, saying, "Hey, why are you going with her?" It's possible that the next person to do it will be Davos once he sees something. He sees something wrong, if he sees something wrong as well. So I think that's where they're kind of going, and then Jon will see enough, and then finally something's going to happen, because I do think we're going to get that Jon, Dany fight. So then the other part is, yes, I have read there are some of the potential leaks. So if you don't want to listen to any of this, just tune out for a second. But yeah, I have read some of the potential leaks or spoilers that at the end Jon is going to go back to the Wall. I think that would be really dumb. And at this point, now that every episode we get through, it makes things less and less likely to happen, simply because at some point we're going to run out of time. And so I just don't see a situation in which, to me, the Wall is done, because I think the Night King stuff is over. They'd have to really do a 180 to bring any of that back. So right now I see no reason that the Wall should even exist, because it's part of a big portion of it is tore down. So I do not believe into that leak / spoiler / theory at all.
Yeah, I've said, I think this was the last episode, or maybe it was last Friday, we were kind of talking about the idea that Jon may, if there's that fight between he and Dany, I don't know if it's like his forces versus her, or if there's just like a verbal, back and forth exchange, or is he going to see that she's going crazy or needs to be put out, and he pulls her in close and ends her, takes the dagger and kind of puts an end to Dany. That would be crazy, but I've seen people kind of talking like maybe maybe things will get that bad. It'll get to that point, and all of his friends will be like, you see, she's doing things that just that aren't good for Westeros, or not good for the realm, as Varys would say. And so if he does plunge that dagger in there, either he's going to take the throne himself, or if he doesn't, then I feel like someone's going to have to say, well, that wasn't a good move, or maybe that wasn't right. They could pardon him. I mean, that's Jaime Lannister. That's what happens with, he's a Kingslayer. The rebels end up being, king and great lords and stuff in Robert's Rebellion. But maybe if it's Tyrion who takes the throne and he says, hey, you're going to go rebuild the Wall. Why? Because I said so. I don't know. I mean, or he's imprisoned, or he executes Jon. Yeah, if he ends up killing Dany, like that could be something. I've read, like, I don't know if that's spoiler. I don't know what that is, but I've read people talking about that idea, and I'm like, dang, that hurts. That hurts me.
Yeah.
To think about that.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll find out next week.
Yeah. All right. I think we have one more Raven. Or two more.
Yeah. We have one more Raven, and then kind of an origin story. So and they're both pretty quick here. So this is from Lady Leia of House Alyssa. New fan of your podcast. I could be completely wrong, but please look at season 1, episode 7, starting at 23 minutes. Robert Baratheon is in bed this is where he's bedridden, about to die, and demands everyone out of the room except Ned, and he wants him to write him his last rites. Ned writes the rightful heir instead of Joffrey because he found out that Joffrey is a Lannister. But to me, this means something. What if Gendry is the one? Something major happens due to him. I'm over here rewatching season 1, drinking champagne, so I could be off my rocker, but I think my scroll is going to come into play at some point. It's probably totally off because the scene made me go, oh my God, love your podcast, thinking out loud. So, yeah, the letter that he has gets, well, that's not true. He sends one, doesn't he send one copy to Stannis? I know Cersei rips it up in front of Barristan Selmy.
Oh, okay.
That's where Barristan says, those are the king's words. She says, we have a new king now. And like the paper is meaningless.
Yeah, I can't remember if he sends one to.
I know he does. I know he does send notice to Stannis about it. I don't know if he made an exact copy of that letter. I can't remember season 1 right off the top of my head now because I'm so involved in season 8. But it is still the Gendry role now that he is Lord of Storm's End. Could still be something that came in at the very, very end if they did something where they just wanted to give the throne to somebody else, and all of this warring was for naught. And if a Targaryen sits the throne, then all of Robert's rebellion was for naught because the Targaryens just get put back in power. So I could see them going that route, but they've mentioned now that he is Gendry Baratheon, and Daenerys has already claimed him that. So that is something that could end up being. Is let's say Jon, Dany, and Cersei all die. I guess that would kind of make Gendry the next claimant to the throne. So
yeah, and not to jump ahead here, but we did have another Dakota Shuck kind of said the same thing, really. Just in that the theory is it's no secret that Gendry is Robert's son, but what if he's not a bastard? I know he was legitimized in episode 4, but he may have always been legitimate. Cersei told Kat when she was sitting with the unconscious Bran that she had a son taken from her, quote, a beautiful black-haired boy. She said the boy was taken from her, and she never even went to the crypts to see him. So what does that mean? The boy may not have been dead. The boy may have been Gendry. A little later in Season 1, Episode 4, Ned is seeking out the information from Jon Arryn, why he was supposedly killed. Ned asked Gendry what questions Jon had asked him, and Gendry told Ned that Lord Arryn asked about his mother and what she looked like. Gendry responded to this question. His response to this question was, and get this, he responded, quote, she had yellow hair and would sing to me sometimes. Granted, he also said she was dead, but maybe that is what he has been told. He was young there. There was no way of knowing for sure. I know this theory slightly goes against the Frog Woman's prophecy. However, the show has never really followed details when it comes to prophecy. So maybe this can continue to the war to come. Also, if this were true, Gendry would hold the strongest claim to the throne. I hope I don't sound crazy, but I thought this was worth sharing with the podcast. Keep it up, Dakota Shuck, from House Shuck there. So, yeah, it kind of goes along with Lady Leia. Thoughts on Gendry, being a Baratheon all along, and not just now.
I mean, it's possible she, if especially with Tyrion talking about the baby, if it is when he's talking to Cersei, you love your children, and then it's possible that he is. I think it's much more plausible in the books. I don't see it happening in the show. I think that'd be a lot to.
It's a lot. Yeah, and again, you would need another brand come in there and explain all of this to us and everything, and it'd be tough. So,
right.
But yeah, cool. I just wanted to a couple people had mentioned similar things there, so we thought I wanted to lump those in together.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, I think we have just an origin story.
Yeah. Okay, so this something we haven't done in a while. We haven't had one of these in a while, but we do like to read people's kind of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire origin stories, just how you got into them. This is Lady Brittany. Hello, sirs. Not sure if you still like to hear people's origin stories or not, but I figured it would be fun to share mine since I just jumped into the group unannounced. Anybody can jump into the group whenever you'd like, and
absolutely.
We do absolutely like still hearing them. It's been a long time since last July, silent listener of the show, but with the new season, I knew I had to join the group conversation. I'm never on Facebook anymore, so I'm literally just here for Ben the Knee. Pretty much me as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say.
Yeah.
I had been a late bloomer to the show. I hardly watch TV and never commit to anything until I figured if it's worth it or not. Starting after season 6 to prep for season 7 premiere, and was initially sucked into Girl's world. Believe it or not, I've avoided every spoiler on the show up until that point and was just as surprised as everyone who started watching day 1. Once season 7 ended, I knew I had to read the books to fill the gap and found a YouTube channel that was doing a chapter by chapter read along and book show comparison. I said, this is perfect. I said to myself, well, they stopped creating content in A Clash of Kings right before the Red Wedding, and I was devastated. How was I supposed to understand what was going on? How could I make those deeper connections and see the hidden elements being a first-time reader? I didn't want to miss anything, so I put the books aside for a bit while life was crazy. Then I found you guys. I was obviously further in you than you are in your read through on Ben the Knee, but you both gave so much background detailed and made mention of future events. Someone called those spoilers, but I felt I already had the gist from the show. that I felt confident in picking up the books again. With your guys' help, I still had a basic understanding of those things when I got to them in the books and didn't feel completely lost. I'm happy to say I just finished my first read-through this past week and I moved on to the Dunk and Egg series thanks to your suggestion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Thank you for what you guys do. My answers are not always as well thought out as some, but I do love hearing everyone's thoughts, feelings, and theories regardless of what my standpoint is. So excited to see what comes now. Lady Brittany.
Yeah. And Lady Brittany, we appreciate your thoughts and exactly what you said there. We read some crazy, we read some awesome Ravens that make us think. We read some just short, quick comments. We read some in-depth. I mean, Lord Adam Parker, thanks for all the work he does. We read some crazy 12-page documents. We love just reading everyone's thoughts and discussing that and having you guys discuss in the group. So spot on there. Love everyone's thoughts and feelings and theories, regardless of what our individual standpoints are. I have my own that I sort of, I'm still trying to figure out exactly where I stand on certain issues. And some days I like this and some days I don't like it. So I'm kind of like back and forth. I'm always just, the show is, it's got me shook here. I just need it to wrap up so I can get everything.
I do have one very, very quick, very brief last one here. As this is from Instagram. This is Lady Kiera. She just talks about how we remember talking about how Daenerys' costume has become more red. She noticed a lot in this season that we've seen more red in her costume. One thing I will say, I think the costuming in the show is something that's they take so much time and effort to it. It's always great. There are pictures of next Sunday's episode, and Daenerys has her hair kind of. It doesn't look as well put together, which we know is something, obviously, with she no longer has her handmaiden. But also, Daenerys has added more braids throughout the series because she's won more battles. She still uses that Dothraki kind of hair braid system, I guess.
Right.
And it doesn't seem as if her outfit has started introducing a little more red into it. And some people are saying, oh, it's because she's more mad, or it's because they're adding more Targaryen stuff, but it is something that's kind of noticeable, and I just think it's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, it totally is. I mean, we had two Fridays ago, I think we were talking about Sansa and what she was wearing and how it had all of the dragonflies and the moths and the winged sort of the elements to her dress, and what does that mean? There's something to it in the books, and they were driving there. There's a lot of, again, that source material that they could pull from. So yeah, every character's garment really matters. Says a lot. So that's cool.
Yep.
I like that. I like people pointing that kind of stuff out. So
absolutely. All right. Well, we just have a few quick bold predictions here, and I think that's just about it. So, Sir Ezra, let's each have one bold prediction for this penultimate episode.
Yeah, so I kind of held back on this last week. I was going to make my prediction then, but I knew it would either be this upcoming episode or the episode after that. I was going to go ahead and say it. There is, one true king, and he's been the one true king since the beginning, since the end of season 1. Stannis Baratheon, and I didn't see him die. Okay, I heard what Brienne, said. People have lied to us before, and for some reason, bold prediction, he's back. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So look out for that. Stannis Baratheon coming back. Get off me.
Yeah. Hey, wow. I'd love it. My bold prediction is. Let me see here. I have quite a few. I do think I don't think it'd be bold to say that Daenerys defeats Cersei and sits on the throne, but I'm gonna go ahead and say this episode ends with Jon stabbing Daenerys.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh man! Wow, that would be. I mean, do we bring her back to life? I mean, like, I don't know. Melisandre's gone, right? So that sucks. That's dark, man. I don't know.
That's just I think that's where they're going.
Okay.
So
I like
think
it.
Daenerys.
I like it.
I think Dany goes mad and the whole deal.
Yeah.
So okay. All right. Well, we have one kind of announcement here, Sir Ezra, if you will.
Yeah. So we just wanted to. I mean, Sir Matt and I do other projects, I mean, right now our baby is Bend the Knee. All right, and we love it. We've been YouTubing and podcasting about it for a long time. Big fans of the show, big fans of the book series. As you guys know, we're just like you guys, and we love poring over the text and things. So this is our flagship podcast, if you will. But we do have other projects out there that we wanted to kind of cue you guys in on. I know Sir Matt does Box Trick, kind of a retro gaming video game podcast, and I've been on that before. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we have a lot of listeners who have come from both. And Sir Ezra, you also do a Lord of the Rings podcast called Up Talkin' Tolkien. I know Lord Jason Ross, one of our listeners, is a big fan of that as well.
Yeah. So it's an unexpected podcast where we just we're doing another reread. We're reading chapter by chapter through Lord of the Rings. So that's a lot of fun. So those are our current projects. We are working, and I just wanted to put this name out there because it's coming right after the show, once we're done with the show. But I'm gonna go once it's said, Sir Matt, and once, as you said, once it gets on Twitter.
Now that you talked about it a little bit, it's happening. Yeah, so.
It's happening. So Hyperspace Hangout. We just wanted to put this plug out there. It's a podcast we've been working on, and we're looking to get that going. We just don't have time during the show to really.
Right. Yeah. Right now, everything, all 100% focus needs to be on Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So, but we thought while we had new listeners, people coming in, if you're interested in other genres, fandoms, whatever it may be, we have a couple for you, so you can go check those out. And we'd love to have you on those podcasts. And we collaborate together. We do different things. Sir Matt and I have a plethora of projects that we have put together and been working on, and it's going to be great. So stay tuned this summer. We've got a lot of work to do, and we're excited to bring you guys some really cool content in other fandoms, and we're ready to dive back into the books. We've already got another collaboration kind of lined up with Order of the Green Hand over the summer, and they're kind of I'll say this right now, they're kind of a controversial podcast. They're a YouTube channel, and I like it. I like the edginess. I enjoy listening to different thoughts, things that are outside of the box. So we're hoping to do more of that in the future.
Yeah, so all right, guys. Well, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Season 8, Episode 5.
Yeah. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember, fire and blood